G'day everyone, afternoon.
Hello everyone.
Hi there.
Look, we might wait for 1 more minute and kind of slightly fashionable to be 1 minute late. It's a busy time of day, so we'll wait for another minute and then we will get started. I also don't want this to be too late tonight because people have other things to do. So, you know, those little errand trips to the supermarket to get the milk you forgot to get this morning or something like that, whatever it is, right? The things of life. Kylie can edit that out. So look, I think what we might do is start, I think, and then we can then do a bit of a, people can then catch up by the time when we get through the first few slides. So look, my name's Dr. Brendan Goodger. I'm the General Manager for Primary Care here at Central and Eastern Sydney PHN. And tonight, what I really want to do is to give you a bit of a briefing on the Primary Care Emergency Response Team and its establishment, and about why we're doing it for, what we hope to achieve from it, and also about how you guys can play a role on that. Now, look, I'm going to do something quite ambitious, right? I'm going to share my screen, right? And I am a cousin of Mr. Bean, directly related, and we'll see how we go on this, right? So I think that's come up now, guys. Yep. Thank you for that. Now, what I might also do is, so firstly, what I would like to do is to acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples of this nation. We acknowledge the traditional custodians and sovereign people of the land across which we work, and recognise their continuing connection to land, water and community. Pay respect to elders past, present and emerging. So look, welcome, and look, thank you for registering for the Central and Eastern Sydney Primary Care Emergency Response Team. You know who I am now, which is Brendan Goodger, General Manager for Primary Care. With me, I've got my colleagues. We've got Kim Sherman, who's our wonderful Project Officer for Disaster Management, and Kylie Somerville, who's our Manager of Strategic Projects, who's kind of keeping the ship all together, along with Kim, and keeping me under control. Good luck with that. So look, I think we've got, I think we might just continue on, I think, guys, rather than do group introductions. I think we might come back to that, I think. So look, what I would like to do today is really to try and outline what it is we're trying to achieve in terms of disaster management. I think it's really important to recognise that one of the things that we want to try to do is to build resilience in the Central and Eastern Sydney PHN region. Our PHN is, of course, made up of Sydney Local Health District and South East Sydney Local Health District. We are, if you like, the second largest PHN by population. We've got about 1.6 million people, and we've got about 500,000 people or so who pass through our region every day. And so when we think about disaster management, or indeed unforeseen events, right? Unforeseen critical events. Really, what we're referring to here is the things that can happen unexpectedly, and where there's a thing that can also impact public health. And so for us, what we want to try and do is build up the preparedness and the resilience within our region to be able to respond to a disaster or an unexpected event. And so typically in disaster management, there are 4 key phases. There is, of course, the prevention and planning, and that involves obviously reviewing hazard mitigation and risk minimisation. And there's lots of things that can be done to support that, and we'll be working on that. There's also the preparedness aspect of it, which is around the business continuity planning, noting that's part of all of general practice in terms of accreditation. Also about person-centred emergency preparedness, and that's obviously a really important aspect. Then, of course, so we move from the prevention to the preparedness, and then, of course, if something does happen, then there's the response, and that's about potentially about providing some safeguards in terms of practices and delivering healthcare, in practice support, and also potentially providing support to evacuation centres. And then, of course, we know that after response, typically there's a recovery period, and depending on the size of the disaster or the unexpected event. So really, disaster management is really a continuous process that really tries to help create a mindset for communities and also for health professionals about how we might respond to disaster management. Just going to move on to the next slide now. Now, we should note that formally, sorry, I should go back to the slide actually, bear with me. Bear with me on this. Here we go. Here we go. So one of the issues for us is about why should we invest in disaster management? I guess part of the reason is because there is increasing frequency and severity of someone is saying they can't see the slides, guys, on the chat. Can other people see the slides?
Yes, I'm not sure why that would be.
Bit of a check. Oh, so Jenny can see them. Thanks, Jenny.
Yes.
Okay. So look, you might want to, well, I'll try and use slightly more dulcet tones, and that you might want to perhaps even hop out of Teams and come back in again, because sometimes Teams can be a bit buggy sometimes. All right. But I'm also happy to speak to us. Thanks, Margie. So why is disaster management essential? Well, again, we've got the increasing frequency and severity of disasters, particularly in terms of climate change. We have a climate change framework here in the PHN, and there's certainly more disasters that are expected. We know that they have huge impact upon communities and organisations. It's also a shared responsibility across the whole of community about whole of organisations, and primary care needs to play its role as part of that. And more is going to be expected from primary care providers. Right? We know that good effective disaster management can save lives and properties. It reduces economic losses, enhances recovery, and it helps communities adapt, become resilient. And I'd also say too that, in the last year, we've had to respond to 3 unexpected events just in our region. Okay, because we also have the airport in our region. We've had evacuees attending from different parts of the world who have been needing medical care, and so we've had to arrange that. And of course, we've also had the Bondi incident as well that we were involved with. So our region is affected. And by the way, I don't know how many of you were around last Sunday, but last Sunday, I think when the storms came through, my first thought was, gee, we've got another really big hail event or something else like that, and it doesn't take much for, if you like, a sudden turn like that to really create conditions that can impact, the health and well-being of people. Now, I just want to try and go to, here we are. So in terms of then our role is around risk assessment. it's oh, good on you, Camille. I'm glad that you can see the slides. Our role is around the risk assessment. It's also about liaising between primary care providers and the broader health emergency response team. It's also about coordinating disaster management cycle activities. It's communication mobilisation, and it's also about coordinating the primary care enhancement team for our region. It's about also for us providing resourcing and support for a primary care emergency response capability. And can I say to you that there's also a growing recognition of the key role of primary health networks in primary care. Typically, the Defence Force has often been first called into these kind of disasters, but increasingly we know that the Defence Force is stretched. So the federal government has been reaching out to stakeholders and saying, well, who else could provide support? And the federal government has realised that PHNs and primary care are uniquely placed to provide support in a disaster. That is because not only are there access to skilled health professionals, but they're local skilled health professionals who know how to respond. And they've got those networks, those pathways, and providing that efficient care. And PHNs really know the local healthcare system. So, and if we look at some of the national disaster plans that are being prepared, you'll find that PHNs and primary care are front and centre of that planning. And PHNs are also going to be given some funding, which is also nice to prepare for that, right? Now, we've kind of jumped the gun on this because what we've done is we've been able to rattle the tin. We've found some money, and so Kim has come on board, who's incredibly experienced and has done some prior work in disaster management. So we're very lucky to have Kim to try and lay the groundwork for our future plans for how to respond to disasters in our region. Now, so just what I come to now, which I think what some of you might be interested in, which is, so what are our key objectives in setting up the primary care emergency response team? One is around ensuring continuity of access to primary care when there is a disaster or critical incident, and also supporting the emergency response, providing immediate health needs in a disaster situation. Mental health needs to be part of that, but by far and above, I think the greatest call upon will be those immediate physical type needs, but again, supported also by those ongoing mental health needs, depending on the severity of the situation. So those are our two main objectives in setting up a primary care emergency response team. And can I say to you that other PHNs across New South Wales are also doing something very similar to us. We're kind of leveraging off each other, which is kind of nice. Now, the kind of activities, and look, I should just make a further comment on this as well, which is in terms of disaster management, in terms of who is responsible for disaster management. In New South Wales, New South Wales Health is responsible for coordinating, for the health service component to disaster management, and their role is to coordinate the provision of health services during emergencies, and also to ensure that coordination happens really effectively. And PHNs are part of the local disaster management response teams, right? That's coordinated by the local health districts through the Ministry of Health, and we've been actively involved in that. So for us, it's about mobilising the primary care workforce should a surge workforce be required. We know that much of the needs in disaster can be met through primary care. EDs would get overwhelmed, and it's more appropriate that the level of care is delivered where it's most appropriate, i.e. through primary care. Now, I'd like to go back to the slide, which is so the kind of activities that we're seeing this primary care emergency response team would have would be around services provided by usual practice, telehealth, or through our 5 urgent care clinics. We're hoping to have more, but at the moment we've got 5 urgent care clinics. And so that's the kind of support or mechanism for which the support might be provided. And providers could, those people who become part of the primary care emergency response team could assist from within their own practice. It really is around short-term surge capacity, and to help with triage patients from evacuation centres or overcrowded EDs. And of course, the usual Medicare items would apply for that as well. So what we are wanting is, in the first instance, to set up a response team that's made up of individuals who can be called upon to provide support should there be an emergency or a disaster. Now, as we start to mature the primary care emergency response team, and we're hoping you guys are sort of like the leaders of this with us, that we will then engage with practices and also get them on board as well. So for us, what we want to do is try and stage this out, right? And add on more capability as the primary care emergency response team matures. We can't do everything right at the start. So our first thing at the start was to at least establish a small group of people willing to be involved. And then what we'll then do is add on more capability as time goes by. Now, in terms of evacuation centre support, that could well happen for us, and that would only, however, be in major catastrophic events. And obviously there'd be remuneration that would be provided and that would be negotiated, but we understand the needs of that. And typically in a disaster, there's, the PHNs are given additional funding to be able to respond to that. I think this is unlikely for evacuation centre support. However, it's possible, and we want to build it into our model, even though we might not start that off right from the get-go, right? So it's something that we'll build into a model, just being aware that could happen, right? It could also be that that the people who become part of a primary care emergency response team could support other evacuation centres. Like if there's a big bushfire somewhere outside of our region and a major evacuation centre had to be established, then if we were relatively nearby, like in the Blue Mountains, for example, then some of our volunteers, or not volunteers, some of the people who are part of the emergency response team could potentially assist in those evacuation centres. Now, one of the other questions that you guys might be thinking of is, so Brendan, how's it going to work? Well, we're kind of still working that out, to be honest with you. But there are a few principles that we have, right? One of them is this is purely voluntary. No one is compelled to participate as part of the primary care emergency response team. If there was a disaster tomorrow, none of you would be compelled to be part of that, okay? You can say no, and that's absolutely fine, right? So in that respect, when I slightly loosely used the term volunteer before, what I was meaning was you would have the opportunity to say, yes, I'm free to participate as part of that disaster, or no, I'm not, right? But for us, it's about having enough people so that enough people would be able to be in a position to say, yes, I can provide some help on that. And, what I said earlier is important in terms of that we would also seek to engage some of the larger corporate medical centres as well. And we hope that they will also provide support. I've had some discussions. They're very keen to provide support in relation to this, but we need to start to formalise that. Okay. So again, the idea would be that there'd be some sort of SMS type message that would be sent out to check the availability for support. People could say yes, or they could say no. And then what we would then do is obviously convene a bit of a meeting and provide those necessary briefings. Okay. Now, bear with me while I just work the technology a bit here. Beautiful, thank you. Now, one of the things we are going to be offering is, of course, training. We'd like to be able to offer training, but again, it's encouraged, but it's not a requirement. but we think this will be of interest for people attending as part of the emergency response team. It means that effectively we'd be better prepared. We would, of course, pay people to attend that training. It'd be modest training, by the way. We're not talking about conferences in Cairns, and we're talking about localised CPD activities, and that would also gain the points as well. And so what we'd hope to do is work with you to say what training is required. We do a bit of a, bit of a gap analysis, so to speak. So what training would you like? And it's also about trying to get people pre-accredited as well, so that we have their qualifications recognised. So to make it easier if they need to transition between different health centres. Okay, so there's that sort of training. Now, in terms of other issues, in terms of next steps, well, for us, I think the first thing is to firstly get this team established. We want to at least have a response. You don't know when a disaster is going to hit. It could well, we've all got the warnings about what's going to happen over summer. So what we thought we would do is we'll at least get something established. But what we are going to be doing, though, is putting some additional policies and procedures around this to provide support as well. And this will grow over time. We've had a really strong response, I have to say, to our call out, and we're going to increase our communication on that because we do want a reasonably large size team, but we've been really pleased. There's a sense of community, and GPs, pharmacists, mental health workers have all responded. That say, you know what, have all responded and they said, yeah, I'm keen to be part of this, right? So it's kind of pleasing that, and also practice nurses, so my apologies to that. It's a bit naughty of me not to mention practice nurses because we've just launched our practice nurse strategy. So thank you, Kim, for that. Absolutely practice nurses and also practice managers as well. We do also need those administrative people as well, right? So again, we will grow this team over time. So in terms of then a bit of a summary, what we want to do is build a culture of preparedness, right? And we've got to start now, right? And we're going to need your help. For us, it's been investment in the safety and resilience of our region. We don't know when a disaster or an unforeseen event might happen. We just don't know. Again, last Sunday, I got nervous looking at the sky when I saw hail coming down, It's also about trying to increase collaboration amongst different parts of the healthcare system to say that primary care has a lot to offer and we can work in really closely with the local health districts. I think it's also important that we also want to maintain that state of readiness as well, should things happen. We might get through the summer, but who knows what's going to happen down the track. So for us, that really is about building that culture of preparedness and also about working with local practices anyway for their business continuity plans, etc., like that, right? So, and what we'll be doing is obviously working with other PHNs as well and really trying to grow this across New South Wales. Because again, as I said earlier, the Commonwealth are looking to primary care. They're looking to PHNs. They're looking to you guys out there in the field who can stand up. Because the Defence Force can't be everywhere, right? So I just wanted to make that point. Now, just going to go to my next slide here. That's kind of where we're going on this. Now, bearing in mind that we are just in the very early stages of doing this, right? So we're going to build up our capability over time, but we want to have this in place before Christmas because you never know what may happen, okay? Bearing in mind that we have 3 incidents we've had to respond to in the last year, we don't know what will happen. And of course, if something were to happen, then obviously, we're hoping that you guys could become part of that, and we would obviously send out the appropriate messaging to you, right? And obviously, we'll work really closely with the LHDs. I'm the PHN disaster management contact point. And I kind of know a lot of people in primary care, so it's kind of helpful doing that. And we would negotiate with you about your participation. Okay. Now, I'm happy to take any questions at all on the chat, or just let us know. I think that, as I keep on emphasising today, we're going to grow the model. So it's probably unlikely that we would focus too much on the evacuation centres at the start. But there's, and we want to try to do another, Kim, we're going to do another call out, aren't we? For people to attend, for volunteers, so to speak.
We will be doing it on a regular basis. Yeah.
Right. Right.
So far, we've had, as you said, a great response. We've had, I think, 14 individuals express interest, so that's really great.
And it'd be nice to. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and a good mix. So GPs, practice nurses, mental health workers, pharmacists, really good.
Yeah, and we need all of those different groups, right? We'll also be giving a chat to some of the corporates, and you know what it's like in disaster. People tend to come together, right? And we've got really good relationships with the larger practices and the smaller ones as well, who might be in the right position. And we've got, obviously, the urgent care centres. We've got 5 of them, so that's quite helpful as well. So you can see, I think we're fairly well placed, but again, for us, it's about just embedding the maturity of our systems, right? I'm happy to, let me just monitor the chat, and please post questions in the chat. I'll stop sharing the presentation. Thank you, Kim. Good on you. Stop presenting. Right, I can see you all. Happy to take any comments at all or any questions. All right. I see Camille's typing away there, so we'll wait till Camille finishes. So again, this is the first stage for us. The Commonwealth will provide us with some further funding, and again, that will also help us develop and test our systems as well. Okay, and we know that from what happened up North Coast with the floods, GPs and primary care professionals were absolutely central in their response. Okay, absolutely central. We know what happened with the bushfires down south as well. There was GPs, pharmacists, in particular, the use of My Health Record was critical in terms of medications, e-scripts, those kinds of things like that were really critical. In fact, I had a chat to the PHN down that way, and they described e-scripts, the use of My Health Record, those kinds of things with the ability to be able to exchange information. Telehealth being a bit of a game changer. Yes, Camille, I kind of love your comment, which is you don't know what's going to happen, and I don't want to over-egg the airport stuff, but we have got the airport here, and that also creates a risk. We've also got a highly built-up area as well. We've got people, highly urbanised population, but we've also got people actually living down south in quite forested areas as well. And we're living on the coast. There are extreme weather events that do impact our region. So this is not a theoretical, was my point. Not a theoretical. And the risks from climate change, are very real. In terms of Werner, you've asked about how the corporates could help. Well, I've already had a chat to a couple of the corporates in terms of who run our urgent care services, right? And so that's an obvious link around how the corporates could help in terms of getting access to urgent care. And also some of them have on-site radiology as well. So, if you've got fractures, etc. like that, those urgent care centres with access to on-site radiology and indeed pharmacy type services will be absolutely crucial in that. The other two is with the larger corporates, it's also about encouraging their staff to participate as part of a primary care emergency response team as well. and giving us the full expertise available. The corporates are often very well set up in terms of locations. So it might be that if they need, if it might be that we use some of their locations to set up small emergency response teams, right? So they give us that extra sort of capability, and also to be able to bring in additional workforce should it be ever needed in our region. And I think the corporates I remember that hailstorm of 1999 as well, by the way. I'm showing my age here a bit, speaking personally, but I do remember that. Now, Margie, you've got a question around social work in person rather than type. Can I just clarify what you mean by that?
So, for example, I come from working in New South Wales Health for 10 years as a social worker. We had part of the working there, you needed to do on-call work. So you know what it's like to kind of carry a pager and be there 24/7 and that type of thing,
yep.
If need be. And you kind of trained in that. So I guess also from a child protection, when I was working in child protection, we had to do the disaster recovery training certificate. So it's kind of, you're kind of coming, and then I'm in private practice at the moment. So I've got all these skills and experience that are kind of sitting there redundant. So when I got this email, I thought, oh, I'll put my hand up to sort of just let you know that I'm just one person, but I know a lot of people in a similar boat who are, in that position of used to doing kind of like a 24-hour kind of response when needed, and the skills needed and kind of networked, and as you said, having the local knowledge and that type of thing. But I'm just wondering, is that the sort of thing?
That's exactly the sort of thing. That's exactly the sort of thing. That's exactly. I mean, I kind of wish I'd used your words because you've summarised it beautifully. And I think there is, and everyone has a role to play. Social work, mental health professionals, practice nurses, practice managers. We need people who know the systems, right? Pharmacists, absolutely critical in all of this, right? Because you need medications delivered, and to be able to be dispensed. That is critical, and we need GPs. Clearly, we need GPs, right? And this is why I kind of mentioned the corporates as well. They've got access to medical workforces, and we've used them in the past. Those couple of incidents I mentioned earlier around the airport, we've relied on some of our corporate friends to provide a medical workforce, right? And I have to say to you, we pretty much got that established within about 2 phone calls on a Sunday afternoon recently, right? It was quite extraordinary, right? And that's because of contacts that we have. I was able to phone up an exec in one of the larger corporates, and we literally had it sorted out in about, I don't know, no more than an hour of the first phone call being received. Extraordinary, right? But those are the cause of sort of trusted relationships, and we know that. I also worked through the COVID years as well. I managed their COVID response. We know the importance of being able to respond quickly. And it's often it's more than not based on relationships. Those trusted relationships, absolutely critical. The texting is just an extraordinarily efficient way of doing business, particularly when we've already got that established relationship. It's amazing what happens. And also, if you have executive got fairly high levels of delegation, they can just sort out the funding really, really quickly, right? Yes, that's true, Camille. I think that's correct, and that's why we need a variety of different healthcare professionals, right? Yep. And don't forget the LHDs will also be heavily involved if there's a local disaster. We wouldn't be by ourselves. We'd be working really fully and closely with them, right? And we're talking about it all depends upon the nature of the disaster. It might be a short-term thing, or it might be a longer-term thing, right? And also of the intensity of it as well, right? One of the things we're doing is looking at, we know that in climate change, there's going to be increasing levels of heat waves. We're going to have more people suffering heat stress. These are the sorts of things, and we've got vulnerable populations in caravan parks and those kind of areas, in housing estates. These people are particularly vulnerable. They don't have the resources. So we're very committed to taking a very strong equity approach also with this emergency response team. Okay. But we are going to need a variety of different healthcare professionals. Sorry, I've cut someone off. My apologies.
So what would you like us to do from here?
So, firstly, I can probably put that back to Kim, but what we're saying is we're sort of taking your attendance tonight as further commitment, right? That it's not just like, yeah, I thought about it. So I think what we'd like to say is really is a reaffirmation of your commitment to be part of this emergency response team, given that you guys are sort of, if you like, the initial leaders of it, right? And I mean that with full sincerity. And so what we want to do is have a bit of a team kind of established before Christmas, you know, embryonic as it may seem, and that we will then grow this team over time. So that's what we're hoping, that you guys be part of, if you like, the vanguard, to be part of this initial group, and we will then develop it over time. And then we'll we will put some governance around this as well, provide some additional training support, be able to sort out some of our systems and processes to further support that. But we wanted something in place before summer, to be bluntly honest with you. Yep. And we also wanted to, quite frankly, acknowledge the role of primary care. Right? That primary care can do this, and that it's got a really important role to play. And it's about acknowledging the role of primary care is being able to respond. And if we have a look at the National Health Adaptation Plan, primary care is really strongly mentioned in that. And I've been involved in the consultations on that. Because again, the Defence Force can't always respond.
What plan was that you were talking about?
It's about to come out soon. I've been involved in the consultations on the national, I think I've got the name slightly wrong, but the National Health Adaptation Plan the Commonwealth are developing, right? We've been involved in the consultations on that very extensively, and that's where primary health networks and primary care is getting greater recognition. And that's why the Commonwealth are also about to fund PHNs to get involved much more in disaster management, because they know that localised responses will be needed. That makes sense?
Yeah, it sounds really exciting when the Defence is sort of saying they don't have like the resources to do more. When you're sitting on resources kind of going, yeah, actually we have resources to do more.
Yeah, we do.
It's really nice. And it's sort of like, it sounds like a really good relationship in the sense of, for people who are already trained in that area, the training that you're sort of giving us is just keeping us up to date with what we already know. So it's sort of, and it helps us as well. You manage the CPD and stuff. So there's kind of like a two-way benefit there. So it's really exciting.
So Maggie, can I just emphasise what you've just said? This is absolutely, for us, we see this as a partnership with you guys. It can't work otherwise. It just can't, right? It has to work that way, right? It has to work as a partnership. We might facilitate this, of course, and be the formal contact point, but we're absolutely going to be listening to you guys around your training needs. No doubt we'll probably get you involved in working with the public health units as well in some sort of simulated drills. We'll provide funding for that, for your participation, right? We'll be doing that. But when I've said to the LHDs, we're setting up this primary care response, and they went, oh my God, sorry. Words to the effect of, that's amazing, right? Because they know that they don't have the staff to cover things if there's a disaster in a primary care sense. They don't have that, right? They're really good at ED stuff, absolutely. But if you're looking at things out in the community in general practice, right, that's where primary care can play the role. And it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? And
it's really interesting too, because I don't know if you've had much to do with the Resilience Centre in Sydney.
Yep, we're doing more and more with them, right?
They talk about their core thing. It's one thing to have the skills, which we've obviously got, to have the funding. They're good, but real resilience comes from having the relationships. So I think the networking of people. So it's just really lovely to sort of see what you're doing, bringing people together.
Yeah, and thank you for those comments. And someone's also made a really lovely comment, Verna, which is, it's a nice way to give back to the community. Oh, absolutely. Can I say to you, personally, that's exactly how I feel as well. I've really wanted to put my hand up to lead this. I feel like it's something that we can really successfully do, right? And it does bring health professionals together with a sense of real common purpose, right? So absolutely, I think that's exactly right. So what we intend to do is to reach out to you again and say, look, okay, you've heard me talk tonight. We're hoping that some of you will go, yep, have not been put off. It sounds pretty exciting. And that you continue to put your hand up when Kim reaches back out to you. And then what we'll then do is we'll start to develop up some procedures and policies around this, really around procedures, quite frankly. And then we'll grow this over time. For us, this is not something that we're going to set and forget. It needs to have continual nourishment. All right. So we are absolutely committed to doing this. And the other thing too is, in terms of, can I come back to this issue around proposed partnerships? Can I say to you, I've already got an email today, actually, which I haven't had time to share with Kim or Kylie. My apologies, I've just been rather busy today. But it's also about how we can work really closely with organisations like the Red Cross, right? And part of it's about having, by the way, the coordinated response. Local councils also have a role, but what we don't want to be doing is tripping over each other. That just wastes time and resources and just creates frustration. What we want to do is respond quickly. So one of the things that we'll be doing is establishing those relationships. So when something does go down, people are very clear about who does what, when, and why. Right? And we've got those personal relationships. People know, it's Kim and Brendan, great. Kylie, great. We know them, great, fantastic. They really care on things. Brendan, we need 2 GPs over this location. Can you help? Great. Can we have 2 mental health professionals? You know? Can we get a couple of practice nurses? Like it's that, and we know who to call. Right? Knowing that this is not compulsory, this is voluntary. Because life gets in the way. It might be that you're not able to participate. That's fine. But that's why we want the group of a sufficient size so that we can, a bit like a telephone tree, if you get my drift, we can then move to the next person and say, are you interested, right? And also to provide support to those health professionals who say, I want to be part of this, but maybe someone, can you help me out in terms of relieving or something else like that? There's people who might not want to participate as part of a disaster, but they might be interested in helping someone relieving in their current duties, right? Or we can speak to the employer and say, hey, this is the situation. So there's ways in which we can intervene and support on that level as well, right? Are there any further questions or comments? And Kylie and Kim, jump in if I've not said the words correctly or anything else like that, guys, or if I've, let me know, right? And there's other issues that we'll sort out in terms of professional liability. We know that most people will have their professional insurance arrangements in place, but we'll also put some protocols around that as well. And what we're trying to do is also create a bit of a consistent approach with other primary health networks who are doing something similar, right? So make sure we're fairly consistent. Our region is special, but we will try to make things fairly consistent, right? In case that some of you might well be asked to attend, say, something out the Blue Mountains, I can imagine that, right? So making sure that there's a consistency of approach where we can. Okay. Am I actively keen for more GPs to attend? I could give you quite a strong answer to that, and it would be the effect of heck yes, right? Heck yes, absolutely. We would welcome more GPs to attend, right? Really supportive of that, and really keen for us to do that. And same with the practice nurses. We want to get up to a group that's doesn't put pressure on a few, but rather it spreads the load should there be a disaster. And we need to call on a few people to do that. We would presume that, and we've got to work through this actually, but we would presume that those health professionals would already have working with kids checks, and that they would be vocationally registered, right? So we would assume that, and we're going to leverage off our communications expertise and our contacting with GPs. We'll be, as Kim said, putting out more calls, if you like, to say, sign up now. your region needs you kind of thing, right? And try to get more people to become part of the emergency response. Because you know what? It's a really good thing to do in terms of that. One, we can get the training. Secondly, it's a nice thing to be able to contribute your skills and expertise to. And thirdly, if a disaster happens, you know what? We're all in together. It all affects our families. All of us are impacted. So it's nice to be able to contribute, I think, to that. There is a certain level of, as the Dalai Lama said, it's nice. You feel good when you give back. So there is that sense of reciprocity that we have as well, which is we'll provide support, but we also want you guys to get something out of it as well. All right. Now, any further comments or questions that people want to raise? And again, we're going to link this all to also in our, we've got Kylie's leading all of this. This is our climate change plan as well. It kind of links into that as well, right? Now I'm happy to pause for a second to see if there's any hands up or if that's sounding okay to everyone. Does anyone have any concerns, right? Maybe if I can ask that. A bit of lack of detail here and there, but we're going to flesh that out, right? Yes, it will allow you to contribute, Camille, in an official capacity. Absolutely. You'll become part of the CESPHN Primary Care Emergency Response Team. Yep, absolutely. And what we'd hope is also that there'll be some cross-credentialing in with the local EDs as well, so that if you are needed to support in an ED, for example, where your skills are appropriate, that you'll already be registered to some extent, right? So you won't need to go through the administrative rigmarole. And obviously, we'll need to sort that out. But that's obviously, one of the plans going forward, one of the goals going forward, right? And what we don't want, Camille, you've expressed it beautifully, by the way. What we don't want to have to do is dial a mate who can help out. What we want to do, that's very ad hoc. What we want to do is have a much more established, formalised process. Right? Because at the moment, that's what we've been doing. We've been dialing a mate, a local GP friend that we know, right? Or a practice nurse, can you help? Or a practice manager. That's how we've done it. But it's a bit ad hoc, right? And we want to formalise things, get it on a much more sustainable basis.
Okay.
All right. Now, look, can I suggest, Kim, would you like to pop your email address in the chat? And if you've got any further questions, then please reach out to Kim, or for that matter, Kylie. And of course, most of you, or I think some of you probably know me, so let me know. But Kim and Kylie, I didn't rehearse that. Kim and Kylie in the first instance, and we will come back to you. But we are wanting to get something in place BC before Christmas. So we're going to take this group as forming that initial group, because we don't know what's going to happen in the new year and January, etc., like that, and over the summer break. And then we'll wrap some processes and procedures around this, right? Okay. Now it's now 6:20. Can I say to you, thank you so much. All right, I'm really we are incredibly humbled and grateful for the fact that you guys are putting your hand up. All right, I'm really grateful. Because what it does is it speaks to you as people. It speaks to you as health professionals, and it speaks to your values about what you stand for individually, but also professionally, right? So I think you should take, quite frankly, a note of pride in your attendance tonight. We're really pleased with that, delighted by it. We're going to run a few of these sessions. And again, we are going to grow this group. I swear to whoever you believe in, we're going to grow this group, all right? We're going to make it a success so that you guys also get some sort of value out of it as well, beyond the simple contributions that you might be called upon to make, all right? So on that note, can I wish everyone a good evening. Can I thank my colleagues, Kim and Kylie, for that. Thanks, Camille, by all means. I appreciate all the work that you've done, Kim and Kylie. We're really keen to get this done well, and we're really keen to work really closely in a really, I wouldn't say collaborative, but in a much more deeper way than as simply collaboration. Like it really is a partnership, and that's kind of where we're coming from, right? And you can tell by my body language and by the way in which I'm speaking tonight, I really believe in this work. For us, it's something that we've got to do. And you know what? You can't beat a localized response by clinicians who work in the area. Like you just can't beat it, right? So we're going to leverage on what we do well, which is we know our region. We want to own our region, so to speak, and provide care to the people in our region. And there's no better. I mean, you know, there's no better approach than that, I reckon.
Cool.
So thank you for that, and we'll be in touch. All right.
Thanks, Brendan.
Thank you, Brendan.
Thanks, everyone,
Bye,
guys.
everyone. Have a nice evening.
Have a nice evening, everyone.